Hi there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today I have a card for the Color Throwdown Challenge 498, and that uses the colors peach, pale pink, hot pink, and green. And I'm going to start off by sponging some color onto a piece of white cardstock that measures 4 inches by 5¼ inches, and I'm using the Tim Holtz Bubble stencil and several Distress ink cubes. The two that I'm using are Spun Sugar and Abandoned Coral. And as you can tell, my stencil is very well loved. That's just acrylic paint all over that. It's dried on there, and it's not really in any thick layers or anything like that, so it's not hurting the stencil, and it works just fine. I told you I do some mixed media, and so when I do mixed media, I get a little messy, and it doesn't really bother me that there is some paint on my stencils. And if you could see some of my other stencils, you'd think, wow. And I have cleaned a few of them. All I'm doing is just kind of sponging around, holding that in place, and then when I get the look that I want, I set that off to the side. So now I'm going to stamp my images onto a scrap of Kansan XL watercolor paper, and I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And those images are from the My Favorite Things stamp set called Ocean Pals. And I think it was on sale this last week for 50% off. So don't quote me on that. I think it was, though. Anyway, I stamped it down, heat set it off camera there. And now I'm just going to zoom in so you can see me doing some watercoloring. The VersaFine Onyx Black ink is a good watercolor ink to use for watercoloring. It's not an actual watercolor ink, it's a pigment ink. So once it's heated, it shouldn't move. And all I'm doing is putting down a light wash of that pink, and that pink is the picked raspberry. And so I'm going to start off with just doing one layer of color. It's nothing fancy here, I will say. And I'm using a number 4 paintbrush there. I'm not doing anything fancy here, just putting down the light wash, because it's a pretty intricate image there in the tentacles. And it was actually causing me a little bit of frustration because I was going out of the lines, and I thought, you know, we're just going to go with the messy look then. And once that's a little bit dry, I'll add a little bit more paint because I want it to be darker, because that ink does have a tendency to dry back a little bit. And I'll clean off my paintbrush, and I'll move on to the Forest Moss, is the green that I'm using. And I'm not being real careful. I'm getting it in the lines for the most part, but I don't care that it's a messy paint look. And so I will just paint all of those. And then I'll kind of let those dry a little bit. And then I'm going to go back in with a second layer of paint. And that's where you can get your shadowing. So you don't need to have a lot of paint colors in your repertoire. You just need a few. And so here I'm going to show you how you can add a little bit of dimension to your images just by layering up that color. I want to make those tentacles a little bit darker. Of course, I'm also getting a little messier as I do that. But that pink is really pretty. I figured that worked pretty well for the hot pink color that is in the Color Throwdown. And see how I'm just adding extra darkness on that one side, the left-hand side there. And then I'll do the same with the green, just kind of adding a little bit of shadowing. Again, fairly messy. I haven't participated in the Color Throwdown Challenge for a while. I've just been so busy, but I thought I'd better jump in because I've missed doing some color challenges. And then once I'm done painting, I'm actually going to heat set those, and I'm going to use that leftover ink that I have on my craft mat, and I'm just going to splatter that onto my panel. And to do that, you just add a little extra water, and you can bump it against your finger to get some splatters. I'm taping my dies into place over my images using some micro pour tape, and then I'm going to run those through my Sizzix Sidekick. Those fit so perfectly. I'm so thankful I have that Sidekick now. I'm telling you, my craft space is fairly small, and obviously I don't mind having my big shot because you need that for bigger dies. But when you just have a few smaller dies that you need to use, that Sidekick is wonderful because it just sits on the side of my desk. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment on a scrap of black cardstock using my anti-static powder tool and a Versamark ink. And I'm going to cover it with white embossing powder after I've got it inked up. like you've seen me do a bunch of times. And then I'm going to heat set that using my heat tool. And you can just watch the beautiful powder melt. And I'm going to use a die again, and this one comes from the My Favorite Things Essential Fishtail Sentiment Strips. And once again, once I get that lined up, I'll run that through my Sidekick. I've covered my panel with some foam tape, and I'll adhere that to a card base that's white, that is a top folding A2 size card. And then to adhere my little, whatever you call those, are they algae? What are those? Coral bits. I'm going to use some Ranger Multimedia Matte because I want those flat down to my card, because I'm going to add some dimension to my octopus and my sentiment. And this is a good strong liquid adhesive, so I don't have to worry about those coming up. And like I said, I'll grab foam tape for my octopus, put him in place, and my sentiment. And I'm going to stick it down, and you're going to see it's kind of off center, even though I try very hard to eyeball it. Even using my craft or my my grid mat back there, I still have to pick it up and kind of move it again. And then I pull out some Pretty Pink Posh sparkling clear sequins in 4mm and 6mm, and I'm just going to place a few of those on there. And I'm doing those with my fingers because I don't plan to put a lot on there. I only put 5 dots of glue, so I'm going to use 2 big ones. And then I'm going to use 3 little small ones, the 4mm, and place those where I need those to go. And then for a last little bit, I've decided I want to put the octopus or stamp him on the inside, just to add a little something to the inside. And I'm using one of, I think, spun sugar on that. And that's going to finish off my card. So if you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. And thank you so much for stopping by.